Welcome to the Hoops Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Justin Rowan.
And I'm your co-host Phil Boileau, also of Hoops Lounge. And today we're talking Olympic basketball. We've been seeing a lot of prowess from the Americans and not so proud, almost losing Australia today. Um, but it's an idea out there that I thought had a lot of merit. Some people in the media agree, and a lot of people like Mr. Rowan maybe not. I personally think that you know what, maybe it won't count for every country going into the Worlds or the Olympics, but I think the United States should put a stance on saying all of our players who go to the Olympics have to be 25 or under. I think there's merit to this. I think there's points all over the place. Right off the bat, Justin, I can hear you seething right after Carmelo Anthony hits his threes, right after all this. Am I at a left field with this, or do you think there's a point?
I honestly don't agree with it, especially when you think of the United States and think about how big of a deal it was last time that they didn't win a gold medal. When they sent Paul Pierce, the ghost of Reggie Miller, I believe Andre Miller was the point guard of that team, and they didn't win a medal. I believe that was in the Worlds, but it was such a big deal. And even though everybody knows that the United States produces the best basketball talent in the world, there's still kind of that complex where they want to prove it on a night to night basis. And if you look at tonight's game, we're recording this on a Wednesday, where Australia coming down to the wire with Team USA. I think that's what it's all about. I think that the rest of the countries want to measure themselves up against the best because that's what the Olympics are. If you set a 25 and under team, a team that is still, for the most part, you're going to be dealing with guys that are still trying to figure out how to win. I honestly think that it does a disservice to basketball. It cheapens the Olympics. And at that point, if you don't send the best of the best that are willing to come, what's the point of having basketball in the Olympics?
I could have said the exact same thing about the dunk contest every year NBA All-Star break. But what I'm going to say is, look, I think that's a good argument for the world wants competition, but can you not kind of see it in this weird like Donald Trump-esque like my hands are bigger than yours, so I'm gonna send my guns against you, like I feel like because they lost, like I think you're talking about 2004 with Greece, right? Was that the
Oh
one?
no, no. The year before or 2 years prior, like even before the Olympics.
Okay, yeah, but
Yeah.
what I'm basically saying is, like I get that other teams want to have the best competition, but I think almost losing to Australia is more like an anomaly. Like if the U.S. doesn't win and by convincing fashion in every single game, it's seen as almost a loss or a shocker, right? And to me, the spirit of competition is legitimate. Um, Balance on some level. And if you had under 25, like, look, the US could field three Olympic teams and still come gold, silver, bronze, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so my point is not only that, but the US has by far the most players in the NBA compared to any other country, right?
Yeah.
And so at a certain level, the NBA is also an American product. As much as they want to say it's a world game, it's an American product. So
Mhm.
they have to protect their brand and their employees and their service at a certain point. When people are over 25, that's when injuries happen. Look, I get sending NBA players there. We saw Westbrook, we saw KD, we saw a lot of guys jump their game after some good experiences at Worlds or Olympics. Like, I get it. But once you're 25, if you haven't figured it out already on some level, like when people are complaining that Andrew Wiggins is not going for Canada, I get you there because of
Yeah.
because of that same issue. But if
Yeah,
you
and especially because he wants to view himself as a leader. You don't say, "Oh, I want to be a leader for this program. I believe that I can be that," and then you no show against Venezuela last year, and then you don't show up this year when, in all likelihood, even though I love what the Timberwolves are building, they're not a playoff team. Not in my eyes. I don't see them being a playoff team, even in a weaker Western Conference. But you don't say you're a leader and put yourself in position to be a leader and then no show.
well, especially because he's trying to be a leader, but Carl Anthony Towns is easily the most vocal on that team already, and if not him, like I would say even Rubio maybe even more. I mean it's not hard to find guys who are more vocal than Andrew Wiggins. But going back to the point, look, if you just like to me, adding people who are, 26 plus, what it also does is it takes away from a spot from a guy who could have benefited, right? Like there are guys who got cut from Team USA, or even guys who do play, like Harrison Barnes, who who, okay, fine, like we can laugh at some of these players, but there are some players who legitimately could benefit from this. And if I'm the US, I'm like, listen, I can still look, if you forced me as the GM of Team US or the president to field a team that's 25 and under, I could still field a
Yeah.
fantastic team.
Yeah, but in my opinion, you're not winning the medal. I don't think you're winning the medal, and I think it's revisionist history to assume that Team USA just steamrolls teams. If you look at the last Olympics, the gold medal game, it was a 7 point margin. It was essentially a tie game throughout, and the United States pulled away. They outscored Spain by 6 points in the fourth quarter. Going into the fourth, they only had a 1 point lead. What you're dealing with is teams that have professionals, even though they're not all NBA players, they still are pros that have played together for a long time, that have a lot of experience and chemistry together. And in single elimination basketball games, that's important. That's why Kentucky doesn't win the NCAA tournament every year. I don't care that they have the best young talent. When it comes to
Because
it,
they don't play
teams,
Karl Anthony Towns properly.
I mean, that's definitely a factor, but still, year after year, John Wall, Patrick Patterson, DeMarcus Cousins, Eric Bledsoe were all on a team together. They didn't win because they don't have that chemistry. When you're dealing with full grown men that have played together, it makes a difference. So Spain came close. Australia came close this year. When you look at Spain's team, it was going up against a team that's had Chris Paul, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Tyson Chandler, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Love, James Harden, Anthony Davis, Carmelo Anthony. Like, we're talking about the most loaded team you could possibly form at the time. And it came down to the wire. I just think if you're doing 25 and under, because I think that's almost more arrogant than sending your best of your best and blowing out Venezuela and teams like that. Because there are teams that are pushing to catch up. You look at Canada, who's on the verge of becoming legitimate on that international stage.
And Australia
If everyone plays, Australia, who didn't have Dante Exum playing,
didn't have Thon
they
Maker.
they didn't have Thon Maker playing. They didn't have Ben Simmons playing. Like, there's a lot of teams that I think are catching up. And right as international basketball starts to elevate itself and start to become competitive, to pull out when you are still scraping by in a few games, and start sending your younger players, I think that's arrogant. I think it doesn't serve the Olympics well. I don't think it's great. Obviously, it benefits the younger players, but I think these situations benefit the players that are going. You see guys like Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan who finally get an opportunity to play on a team where they aren't number one and two guys.
But
I
why do they
think
need to be there? That's the point. They're not even starting on this team. And look, if either one of those guys goes down a la Paul George, the Raptors are sunk next year, right? And that's the point. Like the NBA at a certain point needs to step up and say that we need to maintain our level. Look, sending all
I
these All-Stars, I
I
get
mean,
it.
if they're not playing here, they're going to be playing at Rutgers Park. They're going to be playing street ball. They're going to be playing in the Drew League. They are just as likely to get hurt there. And I think it benefits guys like Lowry and DeRozan to play with guys that are better than them, because now they're not the number one and two guys for like the first time in maybe 4 or 5 years. It gives them the opportunity to develop that team concept. You see guys regularly have career years after their time with Team USA. I think it benefits them. And from a league standpoint and a marketing standpoint, as much as people hate it, Team USA is where these super teams and the friendships and stuff like that start to get formed. You don't get the big three. You don't get the Heatles in Miami if it wasn't for them all playing together
Is
with
that
Team
maybe
USA.
just making my point though? If you hate super teams and you hate this as a fan, I mean,
Well,
I know you're going
if
to say
you
this
hate
was
it
going
as
to
a
happen
fan,
anyways, but
you unfortunately, like, everyone says that and they love the illusion of parody, but parody has never existed in the NBA. It's just a little bit closer than it is now. And you know what? The funny thing about those super teams is you still can only score 3 points maximum in a possession. and they're still going to struggle, just like Team USA with all this bolstered up talent. Struggle against Team Australia, you still are going to have to find a way to play a team concept. There's still going to be guys that are sacrificing, and they're not going to win 82 games. So I honestly think that the experience of Team USA, it helps push these players, especially when they practice together and things like that. I think it helps your stars get to another level. I think it ends up helping the league from a marketing standpoint. I think it's great internationally where these teams are measuring up against the gold standard that is the United States, and overall, I think it's a disservice to the to Team USA. I think it's a disservice to the Olympics. I just think not having the best of the best that are willing to go, and I support them having that decision. I support guys like LeBron not going or whatever, but I think the opportunity should be there for all American-born players that want to play to try out for Team USA.
Would you meet me in the middle and make a 30 cap? Or do you think that the advantage goes no matter what the age? Like even if you're 32, 33, you're still going to produce and benefit
I
from
think
this?
I think you're still going to produce, and I think there's still value in older players going there, mentoring the young guys, being around there. Kobe was that in 2012. Him and Kyrie Irving strengthened an already a friendship that they had already established at that point. But that's something that's carried forward. And Kyrie talked about, even after the championship, calling up Kobe Bryant immediately after, and the mentorship, the bonds that were formed in playing with Team USA. I think those type of support groups, I think the best of the best working together, working on their games and improving, competing against other elite talent in practice. I think that helps the product of the NBA, and I think it would be a mistake to take that opportunity away from players.
I get that. Okay, so on an Olympic level, player level, I get that. But let's just cover the other level, which people don't talk about as much, like the NBA owners association and well, owners group and team by team. Let's just say there was an idea, and I don't know how you'd create it, but if a team was saying, "I'm going to give you an extra $2 million, you're not allowed playing in any other tournament."
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Trey Lyles with the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz told him that they were not going to allow him to go. That's still a team by team decision. And if teams don't want to let their players go, they don't want to let their players go. Now, that might hurt your relationship down the road. That's something you have to weigh. But honestly, like, if the teams are against it, they're against it. But I think overall, because it does help their players and there is that development and there is that practicing, even guys that are playing with the USA select team before the team goes off into international competition, that experience is often viewed as very beneficial. So I think a lot of teams are interested in having their players in the program, and they understand what an opportunity is for both their players just to represent their country, as well as an opportunity for development beyond the season, more development that they get than sitting in the gym.
I think I agree with you to the point where only because you said they would play elsewhere, get those reps in, and some places may not be as regulated. So depending on the league or the park you're playing in, there actually could be more of a chance to get hurt. But would you agree with me with the idea that if this caught on with owners, that this could be a potential strike issue because the Players Association at a certain level would just be like, you're not letting our guys rep the countries?
I think there would be some concerns about that. I think if players feel strongly enough about it and enough owners were to kind of act out and prevent their players from playing internationally, that might be something that the players' union gets involved in.
Well, imagine if
Um,
they just start seeing Team USA like silver, bronze out of the out of the standings, but you see the NBA flourishing with less injuries than ever.
mhm.
Like that's a weird balance. Like your country takes the hit, but the product in the sport. Although, if they do play, but okay, let's take this idea of the Olympics and Olympic team and kind of transcend it into another little isolated conversation. Kind of start about what you're talking about before, because I want to compare just before we get off the air there, Canada and Australia as up and coming superpowers
Love it.
for the Olympics. Because to me, obviously, you have a lot of countries that are gaining some big time stars. I think Kristaps is going to be big time. Does Carl Anthony, is he going to play for Dominican or U.S.? I forgot.
He's going to play for. I think he's already played for the Dominican Republic, so
That's
he's
amazing.
ineligible to play for Team USA.
See, although if you think about it, that could be even better for him because he literally gets to play against fantastic. Like when he plays Team USA, he's really gonna have to play at a high level. And if he ever is able to, go against guys like Drummond, DeAndre Jordan, whoever
Mhm.
shows up, that's gonna be a proving ground. So I get you there.
Yeah, I just looked it up. He's officially part of the Dominican Republic's national team, so he's ineligible to ever play for Team USA.
Was that the same as Al Horford? Or is that Venezuela? I forgot.
Um,
I thought that was Dominican.
you might be right. I know
I
Andre
like that.
Blatch. I think Andre Blatch plays for Dominican as well.
Man, I would
Uh,
I would love
I
that
can
front
look
court.
it up.
Al Horford and Karl Anthony Towns. That would be pretty destructive. But okay, Canada US. So the big names coming through the draft, and sorry, coming through the years, obviously Canada is a little bit more well known at this point, I guess. Well, with the Ben Simmons draft, Australia's starting to get on the map.
Yeah.
But okay, so Canada best active players: Andrew Wiggins, Trey Lyles is probably up there. Tristan Thompson, obviously. So it's probably Wiggins then Thompson 1-2, or Thompson Wiggins, depending how you see their development at this point.
Yeah, I think you're looking the three leaders of the program. Obviously, I've kind of aired some of my displeasure for Andrew Wiggins at this point, but I think he's still a big part of the future. But I think Tristan Thompson, and Corey Joseph,
Oh yeah, Jones has been big
especially,
time for them,
yeah,
and Nick
especially.
Stauskas has been showing, right?
Well, I mean,
I mean, he's not
Stauskas
a
being
star or
famous.
anything, but at least he can add a skill, and and he's a live body. I mean, compare this to Team Canada 10 years ago, where you'd have a hard time naming anyone past Joel Anthony.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Joel Anthony, and shout out to Sam Dallenberg. But yeah, Corey Joseph and Tristan Thompson, who it's funny that they've had a bond for so long in their lives, but they're certainly viewed right now as the leaders of the program. Both of them had long playoff runs and still played for Canada in the qualifying tournament, which I think speaks a lot to their commitment to the program. Um, beyond that, you have guys like Trey Lyles. You got Kelly Olynyk, Melvin Ejim, who played absolutely phenomenal in qualifiers. I think you're looking at him probably for backup center. Anthony Bennett still plays decent in international play. Brady Heslip. You got Jamal Murray,
Oh yeah,
Tyler.
you got Murray and oh, we got some strong guard play, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and Tyler Ennis is going to get
you're
some
not
burn there as
huge
well.
in any one position besides a Linux, but in international play, it's true. Like a guy like Bennett, I think is custom made for that kind of game.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's still in a situation there in international play, almost similar to college, where he does have an athletic advantage against players, which, given the lack of a refined skill at this point of his career, being able to just overpower people with athleticism, it does make him a useful player on that stage, especially in the pick and roll. And with a closer 3 point line, he does kind of have the ability to space out the floor every now and then. The other player that's been involved with the team as well that we shouldn't forget is Andrew Nicholson, who actually is very well suited for international play.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of bigs who can stretch the floor, a lot of good heady guard play, and they're all ironically about 6'3", 190. And Tristan Thompson was obviously a beast in the paint, so he's going to protect. I mean, I'm a little worried defensively if Thompson ever has to sit foul trouble, as we've seen.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
uh,
you don't want that.
but apart from that, yeah, it does look pretty good. But we're looking at the other side of the fence. Australia hasn't been known for basketball forever, but people are going to have to start waking up because
Yeah.
people are starting to know Ben Simmons now, and I think he's going to be big time. And if he ever finds a jump shot, I think it'll be really big time. But
Hmm.
Thon Maker, people, I mean, I wasn't sure, like even before a couple weeks ago, if he was technically Canadian or Australian, but he's Australian. Dante Exum, NBA fans haven't gotten to see him a ton because he got hurt his rookie season.
Yeah.
And he's going to come in, a 6'6" point guard who is a decent shooter, can play defense, and I think is going to be fantastic in that Utah system. But so you have basically two point guards there because Simmons is going to play point guard for you. You have Andrew Bogut, a seasoned veteran who had championship experience with Golden State, and you had I'm going to screw up his first name. Is it Aaron or Harold Baines?
Aaron Baines.
Aaron
Aaron Baines.
Baines.
Yeah.
And am I missing anyone after that?
Uh, Joe Ingles
Joe.
from Utah Jazz.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure we're missing too much by not naming him, but yeah,
Oh, come on,
come on. Oh,
man.
you're a Joe fan. He loves his
Joe
cup.
Ingles got that stroke, man.
He loves
He's
his
got the
cup of
gold
Joe. He
spot.
loves his cup of Joe.
Gotta have
Um,
Joe.
okay, so we're taking the two teams and we're saying who has the better future. I think it's you. I think it's Australia, like by a home run. Like, are you gonna convince me it's Canada?
I think it's Canada. I not only because I'm a homer, a shameless homer at that. I do like what Australia has. I think Canada has more depth and they
Yeah.
have more coming down the pipeline. I think Australia's done a really good job developing talent. I think that there's going to be more talent coming. But right now, year after year, you're seeing multiple Canadians getting drafted in the first round. If you want to kind of count Thon Maker, I believe that's three Canadians drafted in the top 10 this year. We've had a couple
Well, you
number
can't
one.
count him on both, right? Because we just said he was on Team
Yeah,
USA. So
I know, but I'm saying he's been developed within the Canadian system. He's been developed and trained in Canada, even though he's going to play for Team Australia, largely because of
he's
playing
part of
time
the
and things
Canada
like
brain
that.
drain, then, right?
Right. It's the
We put all the
development
resources into him only to ship him off to benefit someone else.
because we're so nice. I mean, Australia is basically the other Canada
Oh,
in the world.
Matthew Dellavedova. We didn't mention him.
Oh, Matt, I just assumed that you would have. I guess I
No,
zoned
no,
out on that. But yeah,
we skipped that.
Delhi's
That's the
having
three
himself one
guys.
hell of an Olympics.
Okay, so who do you like better as a point guard trio? Just a weird side conversations. Simmons, Dellavedova, Exum, or Ennis, Murray, Joseph.
I think it's so disingenuous to put Simmons in as a point guard. I think
Why?
he can
Look,
do playmaking,
I
but
don't
he's
even know
not a
why you
point
were
guard. He's
surprised
a
he's going to be a
power
point guard
forward.
for Philly. I don't know why Real Jim had to say this. He is not going to be on a team if he's not your point guard. He needs to play point guard. If you don't have a
I
jump shot in
that's like
today's NBA, you
calling LeBron a point guard.
okay, first of all, he started in the league as a point guard, but then he developed more skills. And at this and I still think at that point developmentally, LeBron had a far greater repertoire than Simmons does. Like I think Simmons has a lot of potential, but you won't call him the slasher that LeBron was at the same age, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think he was the slasher. I think he had a better ball handle than Simmons. But okay, fine. I'll concede that. Let's call them playmakers rather than point guards.
All right,
Just so that
playmaker.
I don't jump through the screen and come after you.
Yeah.
Uh,
And, and
I
technically
think
true, it's Dante Exum hasn't shown he can actually run a team.
right,
So that's
and that was just you, you know me too well. You know that's exactly the direction I'm going to go because I think Canada has more proven ball handlers. We've seen Corey Joseph step up in the big stage. With San Antonio Spurs when Tony Parker went down. We've seen him continue to develop with the Toronto Raptors into a very high-end backup point guard and probably could legitimately be a starter in this league as well.
is he the best
Um,
backup point guard in the league?
I would say he's the best backup point guard.
Or maybe Brandon Knight
But
or whoever. Do they start both? They start Booker. I'm thinking Phoenix right now between Bledsoe
they were
and
starting Bledsoe and Knight, and then injuries had Booker starting. So I'm not willing to put Knight into the backup category yet. I think the best backups last season were probably Corey Joseph by a fairly wide margin, and then you're probably looking at Darren Collison and Matthew Dellavedova as the
Patty
two other.
Mills,
Oh,
another Australian point guard.
yeah, I love Patty. I think he's very good, and
He has been he has been
we should probably mention Mills if we're also going to lump in Jamal Murray as
yeah,
a
yeah.
playmaker.
And Mills has been one of my NBA 2K picks for a while. He's one of those guys you can get really late in the draft, and he brings a good. I'm not saying he does in real life, but a good wing defense, and he can knock down a three. And I'm saying in that game, if this is like your 10th pick, you want someone who does that.
I mean, let's give a shout out to 2K legend Anthony Randolph. Uh,
Perry Jones. He's making his living somewhere else. But okay, so I'll give you this. Canada's backcourt right now, I trust them more. With the game on the line, or to bring up the ball, or to just make things happen. Because already Jamal Murray, like if you had to say year one, who do I trust more, him or Ben Simmons? The ceiling is far different for me, but who do I trust more? I trust Jamal Murray, and I trust Joseph, and I trust Ennis, and I don't think they'll lose me the game.
Yeah, I think Canada has more proven players. They have more proven depth. I think the point guards there, you have to go with them just because of their reputation of what they've done in the league. Both teams, it's interesting. They have these two guys with tremendous upside, both Andrew Wiggins for Canada and Ben Simmons for Australia. When you're really talking about who you're going to take moving forward, it'll probably come down to do both programs continue to get depth from the pipeline, and which one of those guys steps up to the next level? Because as we've seen time and time again, when it comes down to these close games, you need somebody that can just take over. Is that going to be Ben Simmons, who finds a way to either develop a jump shot or overcome the lack of a jumper and find creative ways to dominate? Is it going to be Andrew Wiggins, who also needs to develop a jump shot, but has shown tremendous potential already on at the NBA level, being a 20-point per game
And
guy
he's
there?
getting Tom Thibodeau to really focus that and harness that. Although Simmons is getting Brett Brown, he's known the family forever. Like I think both those guys are
I like
actually in
Brett
really
Brown.
good situations.
I completely agree. So I think when you're talking about who would you take moving forward, I think Canada has more proven, and that's why I give them the nod now. But it's really going to come down to how these great young programs develop. And especially when we're talking about how they're going to square up, I think one thing you need to factor in is that it's not going to happen for another 4 years. And in 4 years, you're not going to be dealing with someone like Andrew Bogut.
No, that's true because I was about to say like I get really worried about Tristan once they get him in foul trouble, but then when Bogut's gone, you kind of got an older Baines or maybe Maker. Maybe he makes it at that point.
Right.
So is it fair to say Canada has the better depth, has some good overall talent. The ceiling may be higher because of the top two, three, four players on Australia. Like I think if you just look at ceiling and you're looking at like Thon, Simmons, Exum, just kind of in that compared to the top three ceiling guys for Canada. Like I think you have to give that nod to Australia.
Maybe I can see how one would give that nod. I guess it would depend how you feel about Dante Exum as well as Thon Maker, respectively. I think there's tremendous potential for Thon Maker to end up as a lesser basketball player than Anthony Bennett. I
Oof.
like.
He
Well, I mean, there's a realistic possibility when you're
That's
talking
a
about
low
these
ceiling
guys that
there.
I know it is, but when you're talking about guys that are that incredibly raw, I think there's always that possibility. So,
Well,
um,
he's been
I
doing it for 40 years, right? So
so it really it really comes down to how you feel about these guys. I think overall it's a very interesting discussion to have, and there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, but I. I guess like if you're talking about the ceiling of those guys, how do you feel about Jamal Murray? Like, do you believe he has a high ceiling? Do you believe he
I
can be
think
a Brandon Roy type player? Like,
look,
I think these are the questions you got to ask yourself.
Brandon Roy had the advantage of being 6'6". I think if Jamal Murray was 6'6", I think I'd believe in him a lot more. I just worry because I know it's a bad example, but I've been jaded by Jimmer, and I just see an undersized shooter with not great athleticism, and I'm just like, ugh. I just saw how he got destroyed once he got in the league. I think he'll be one of their better players. I don't think he'll be a bust at all. I really doubt he's ever any team's best player. I think he'll be kind of your third on a bad team, second kind of player. Um, but I think he's got look to me him and Dante Exum kind of similar ceilings, like because they both have parts about their game right now which really need to be fixed, and they have other parts which are devastating and NBA ready. It's just on opposite scale. Like if you could take them both into one person, like Dante Exum's size, athleticism, length, and defensive prowess with Jamal Murray's offense, well, you'd essentially have Kobe, I guess. Um, but yeah, I mean, both those guys are there. But I want to ask you before we leave, and I'll let you have the final word because you convinced me on the under 25 rule. I'm
Yes.
not going to agree with you on the Canada. I'm still taking Australia. But who is the better pro in 5 years? Andrew Wiggins, Ben Simmons.
Oh my God, that's tough. Oh, you're just hitting me with that. I'm going to go with Andrew Wiggins only because I believe he's proven more. I think that there's legitimate NBA skills and his post All-Star break production coming off this past season, shooting over 40% from three, over, well, I believe 46% from the floor, as well as the defensive potential
He
he
was over
showed
50 from the floor, actually. I was
over.
50, 40, 80 something from free throw.
There you go. And then the defensive ability he showed in his first year, he got away from it a little bit in his
He's not
second
going to be
year,
able to
but
get away with it with Tom Thibodeau.
right, and
And,
he still
and he
showed
wants to
good
learn, right?
individual. He still showed good individual defense. I think when you package all of those things together, I have to give him the nod.
I'm going to disagree with you again, only because I think he has a great chance to be an amazing 3 and D player. The turning into a star part when you're surrounded with Chris Dunn, Levine, and Kat, I think they limit his ceiling a bit. I think Levine is going to be way better than people give him credit for, and I think Wiggins is going to be turned into a very specific role player. I think he'll be a very good player, but I think we'll see him in a role that 2 years ago when Golden State won the championship and Barnes was hitting threes and locking up great players, I think that's a role that he's going to play on a very high caliber Minnesota team. I think that team's going to make the playoffs in a couple of years, do really well. So I think he's going to grow a lot and he wants to grow. But I just think I look at Ben Simmons, I think of the opportunity. I think how much he's going to have the ball in his hands. His only real competition is Dario Saric, who by the way, has been killing it too. Uh, but but I just don't see Saric beating out Ben Simmons, and especially because he's a number one pick, he's going to get the ball all the time. He's already said he's the point guard. Um, they need some scorers around him. I think Embiid or Okafor, whoever ends up winning by attrition, ends up having huge games. Like I think their center position is going to score a ton of points. Um, they're missing some wings, but I just think in general guys who I just think Simmons is going to have the ball way more than Wiggins is going to have the ball. And whether it's getting all your points from the free throw line and just stacking up those assists, like I don't think it's going to be weird for a guy like Simmons to, in a year or two, start averaging like 17 and 9, like 9 assists, like what 5, 6, maybe 7 rebounds, like a poor man's LeBron in certain levels, like and his defense could really jump too, like I I love how people are talking about Wiggins like he's going to be this amazing defensive player, and I think he will be. But Simmons in his own right has the ability, I think, physically, if he wants to be an elite defender as well, because of his
Yeah, there's certainly
athleticism,
that
speed, and
upside, but
lateral quickness.
again, it's what have we seen, right? What have you done for me lately? What have we seen at the NBA level? I tend to go with what I've seen work, what's been proven, rather than just potential, because the NBA is just littered with guys that are the next Kobe, the next LeBron. Hell, Harrison Barnes got labeled as that. So I'm going to always err on the side of caution when it comes to stuff like that.
Oh, I so remember that when Harrison Barnes came in out of North Carolina, he was really highly touted, and we slipped to Golden State. What do you go number?
I think he went about seventh,
Yeah,
but
he went
yeah,
7. Oh yeah,
he
because the
they were
Raptors
expecting
got
him to come
Ross
out
at
the year
8.
before. Yeah,
Yeah,
they were expecting him to come out the year before, and they thought he'd be the number one overall pick. He ended up staying an extra year, struggling with North Carolina. Kyrie Irving had went number one overall the year that everyone assumed Barnes was going to go, and kind of the rest has been history.
oh, I remember that one because the Raptors grabbed Ross, I believe it. No, no, it was
Yeah,
Barnes.
you're
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, it was
It was
Barnes at
Ross at
7, and I was crying because I was like, oh, Barnes would have been such a good Raptor. And then Ross went and just ahead of Andre Drummond, number 9, to the Detroit Pistons. Uh, the NBA draft is a sad thing. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you, Justin, and I'll thank myself for joining. Why not? Let's just have fun with it.
Why not?
So for Justin and Phil, this has been Hoops Lounge Podcast. Catch us for much more going on, and I want to know in the comments below, who did you agree with more? Did you agree with Team Justin or did you agree with Team Phil? Come on, it's gotta be Team Phil. You know this, right? All right, guys, we'll catch you next time, and as always, keep in the lounge.